Peace family, this is African Esquire TV. I am your host Tierney Cherie. Before I get started with this video, if you're watching on YouTube, I would ask that you do like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. In addition, I would ask though that you add yourself to Telegram, my Telegram channel. Telegram is an app, it's a decentralized app, and so if someone tries to take away my profile, that won't be a concern there. In addition, I would ask that you add yourself to my channel on Odyssey. Odyssey is basically like YouTube, except for it's decentralized. So once again, censorship is not going to be the issue that it is on YouTube. And let me say, by the way, guys, there's a lot of comments, a lot of things that get deleted off YouTube. So this is an issue that we should be taking seriously and not being so comfortable with these platforms that we know have a track record of censorship. So today we're going to talk about the new tide of celebrations from African people in the United States for the recognition of Juneteenth, a holiday which commemorates the end of slavery in America, that being a federal holiday. We're going to talk about it in light of the fact that many of our people have put our entire stock, our entire hopes, our entire dreams inside of the idea of the American empire, recognizing them as human beings. Many people have put their own self-perception in whether or not whites will give them affirmation. Many of our people have put our own sense of pride and dignity into the degree to which the white system pays special attention to African people in America. And this is something that we should not necessarily look at people for and say, oh, you are just senseless. This is really a calculated outcome of being enslaved. This is something that happens whenever you are not just physically enslaved, but when you're mentally enslaved. And we know mental slavery is the bigger threat because you have people who are physically not on plantations, but their mind is still there. Their mind still believes that a system that has never showed them any type of rights, never showed them any type of respect, never showed them any type of love, that system is something that they should work to receive approval from. And this Juneteenth situation is just a reminder of why we have to emphasize emancipation from mental slavery, as the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey instructed us to do. So the funny thing about this whole Juneteenth thing is the timing of it. If you do not know, first of all, the police bill that they have been working on in Washington, which is supposed to be in recognition of George Floyd, who was murdered by a white supremacist police officer. Well, it's supposed to be a police bill that's going to get passed at the same time as this holiday, which is going to become the new standard in America. Now, the ironic thing about this is that Joe Biden has missed his deadline that he put in place for actually having that law done. He had this law, the priority was to have it done on the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And it's clear that Congress is not poised to do that. The other funny thing, though, is the more recent outcome that Congress has actually voted against a voting rights bill. And inside of a year following the election, where you see a lot of the Republicans basically conspiring to put a hold on the idea that voting rights should be a priority inside of America. So I'm just going to read briefly from this article. Why didn't Joe Biden do more to avert a voting rights defeat? And this is on CNN, so it's interesting that they actually do take time to criticize Joe Biden. It says that if the expansive voting rights bill suffocated in the Senate Tuesday was the most critical defense of American democracy in decades, it seems odd that a president who put that very goal at the core of his administration didn't do more to pass it. That's because words and actions are very different things. We should know that by now. There are many people who can talk like they love you, talk like they're for you, talk like they're going to be your best friend. But if their actions don't add up, we should not even have it in our minds that they have proven themselves worthy of being given the honorary position of being someone that's close to the interests of our communities. Unfortunately, for the bourgeoisie civil rights leaders who continue to betray us, continue to sell us out, that's not going to be something that's in their interest either, because they see these people as power and they see these people as a means to which they can gain a higher leverage inside of this capitalist system. The bill was seen by Democrats as one of the highest priorities. It was a pushback against scores of ballot suppression bills by Republican-led state legislators that threatened their ability to win future power, built on Donald Trump's vote lies. It is the kind of scenario that calls for the vote-moving muscle of a first-term president at the apex of his power. But in the bleak political math of contemporary Washington, such a jolt of energy from the commander-in-chief didn't materialize. That's right, people. Joe Biden, who won his election by the Black vote, didn't even put in much energy to ensure that African voters would not face ballot difficulties whenever they tried to vote again, which is very ironic, I think. The vote on Tuesday was the most tangible illustration yet of how having such a minuscule congressional majority will thwart liberal dreams of a presidency chock full of radical change, which is what I guess they're saying Joe Biden is, and how Joe Biden's power in such a scenario is clipped. The fact that Joe Biden wasn't leading the charge in such a critical fight reveals everything about the stark realities of power that define Washington mid-2021 and offers insight into how he sees his presidency. Instead of taking on Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republicans who showed the capacity to throttle Biden's legislation plans at any time, the president decided to prioritize other goals like a bipartisan infrastructure deal and other policy aims he views as closer to the American people. It's a gamble that puts him in a position of needing a big win on infrastructure to justify his decisions. Now, the thing that I want to emphasize about this is that we're playing the same game, we're playing the same tricks as we have always played. Many of you, I'm sure, have listened to, and if you have not, please do, The Ballot or the Bullet speech by Malcolm X. What is something that he said inside of that speech that is so reminiscent of this in 2021? He said that the Democrats over in Washington, they have their agenda. So they'll come to the Black community and they'll beg you to vote for them. But whenever it's actually time to put something on the agenda for what they're going to prioritize, what do? They put you last. You put them first and they put you last. Here you see Joe Biden doing that right here. He got into Washington because of African people. If you don't think that, then you need to go back and look at how he was doing prior to him winning the Carolinas. Yet, despite him getting his position because of Black people, what is his priority? His priority is infrastructure. And the article says that's something that's closer to American people, which I thought that they tried to sell us that we're all Americans. This is a reminder that we're not all Americans. Regardless of how much you think you are an American, they show you time and time again you are not. They have a certain level of priorities for the people they deem American. Sorry to tell you, but African people are not included. Now, let's go back to the situation with Juneteenth, because there's some things that I just want to note from how they basically handled this bill. So it says on CBS News, Biden signs a bill making Juneteenth a federal holiday. Biden on Thursday signed into law a measure that makes June 19th or Juneteenth a federal holiday, commemorated end of slavery inside of the United States. Vice President Harris, too, marked the White House event with remarks and introduced Mr. Biden. Okay, the bill, the Juneteenth Independence Day Act, headed to Mr. Joe Biden's desk after it overwhelmingly passed the House on Wednesday and the Senate on Tuesday. Only 14 Republicans in the House had opposed it, while it passed unanimous voice vote in the Senate. As we established Juneteenth as one of our newest national holidays, let's be clear about what happened on June 19th, 1865, the day we call Juneteenth, Harris said. The funny thing about this, though, I would like to know how many Juneteenths Harris has celebrated prior to this. They learned that they were free. They claimed their freedom, she said. Harris said, urging Americans to learn from our history and to teach our children our history. Joe Biden referred to the new holiday as one of the most profound weight and profound power, and he said that it was a day in which we remember the moral stain and terrible toll that slavery took on the country and continues to take. This, of course, is very disingenuous because how long has it been since the last African that we know of or is recorded to have been enslaved was a part of that institution? It's been about over 150 years. So 150 years later, you have someone saying, oh, we want to recognize this as a moral stain on the American history, but you were fine not recognizing that stain up until now. So don't believe any of these so-called sympathetic messages that are really there to pull on your heartstrings and to make you think that you're a part of this American system. Again, they told you you're not American. They have their American priorities. Then they have their Black, keep them quiet priorities. You are not on their priorities. It says, he also said that making Juneteenth a national holiday would enable all Americans to feel the power of this day and learn from our history to celebrate progress and grapple with the distance we've come and the distance we have to travel. Great nations don't ignore their painful moments, Mr. Biden said. We come to terms with the mistakes we've made, he said, and remember them and begin to heal and grow stronger. Now, this is, of course, an insult to African people. Even you who are celebrating, it's an insult to you too. You just might not be aware of it. The insult is that in a time where we're not going to pass anything substantive, we won't pass the police bill, or we're trying to make it more palpable to Republicans by possibly removing qualified immunity, which would basically still allow many police to get off for killing African people. And we're also not going to do anything to stop the infringement of voting rights that we're seeing by some Southern legislators. We're not going to do that either. Instead, we're going to pass a symbolic law, once again, symbolism. And this, by now, we should understand they're very much okay with symbolism. They're comfortable with symbolism. They are okay with it. They're okay with Harriet Tubman being on a dollar bill, which why would you want a freedom fighter on an instrument of captivity of African people internationally? I don't know African people why you would want that, but they're okay with having her on a dollar bill. They're okay with having an African American museum in Washington, D.C. They're okay with having Barack Obama come and sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And they're okay with all these things. They're okay with singing Lift Every Voice and Sing. As
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
They're okay with all those things, but they're not okay with anything that has the power to change the dynamics of exploitation of African people in the United States being on the agenda. So this is to my people who continue to think that this experiment of imperialism, of colonialism, and in our case, internal colonialism is something worth fighting for. You should understand by now that they've clearly shown you what they're willing to do for you and what they're not willing to do for you. And they're not willing to make you a priority for you to them, because whether or not you understand it, they understand that your freedom and liberation comes at a price. And the price would be they would lose power. They would lose the ability to continue to inflict you with certain distresses. They would lose power specifically also for our African people internationally if we were liberated. So understand, they've shown you this is the best they're willing to do. Symbolism. And even if a law does get passed, what's it going to be? More symbolism. It's going to be symbolism because it's not going to be crafted to actually undo the situation as it exists for African people in this country. It's only as soon as we get that message, as soon as we understand what they've been telling us, whether they've been telling us explicitly or implicitly, that we don't belong inside of this experiment of American exceptionalism, that they have their own priorities as to whom they will benefit and whom they won't benefit. Until you understand that and you're willing to move on that being a truth, then you will continue to be the person who looks dumb after voting for someone who did not have your interest in mind. So this is the current reality. I'm sure you all have thoughts, so I'd like to hear them, and I will see you all in the next video. Hey family, this is Tierney Cherie. I'm here to make an announcement that I'm very, very excited to make. I'm excited because I really think this is something that is important for our people. Otherwise, I would not have devoted so much time and energy towards it. So I finished my first book, and the book title is Fostering False Identity, the Child Welfare System's Design of Social Control of the Black Family. Now, why is this book something that I think will be very important for our community? Well, number one, it's dealing with the system of white supremacy, particularly the way that the system has targeted our children. If you don't know, our children are literally our future. Without our children, we have no future. And so understand that the system is very crafty when figuring out what to derail first. And to me, it's no mistake that the system particularly went after the Black family. If you look at what happened whenever we were enslaved by this system, and continues to go after the Black family, continues to go after Black children, continues to try to villainize African parents. So for that, I wanted to particularly talk about this subject. Now, the other thing that the book will deal with is our African identities. Why is it that our African identities are a threat to the system? Why is it that whenever we want to identify ourselves as being African, we get so much drawback inside of the Black community? I think a lot of us are not aware of the history of assimilationist thought inside of our community, this idea that we have to be close to white in order to be accepted. And so that's another subject that we delve into in this book. So I'm hoping that anyone who is, obviously, if you're a parent, a Black parent, and you really want to understand why it is that these systems are going after your children, I encourage you to read this book. I hope that it will arm you with a lot of knowledge and a lot of foresight, not just about how to protect your own children, but how to organize in your community, because that's really the purpose of the book, is to say that we have to organize among ourselves in order to protect ourselves from this white supremacist system. And then obviously, if you're an organizer in general, this is something that I think is important for you to read, because like I said, this is a subject in the Black community that we just don't discuss enough. Child welfare is not something that is going to get enough attention. People, obviously, will organize them around other causes, but this is one that is really important that I feel like we have to pay more attention to.